What's going on, boxing fans? Julian Williams with The Distance. I'm here to give you my number one for my top five chin series for this week. My number five is Gene Fulmer. My number four is Kid Gavilan. My number three is George Chuvalo. And my number two is Jake LaMotta. Now on the number one. My number one was middleweight just as well as Jake LaMotta and Gene Fulmer. See, a lot of fighters on my list were middleweights except for one. At least one time fight at middleweight. Now, this middleweight, had who I think had the best chin, one of the best chins that doesn't really get spoken about. People don't bring up the fact that he took some of the best shots from John the Beast Mugabe and Thomas the Hitman Hearns. This man is marvelous Marvin Hagler. Hagler, in his career, has only been knocked down one time. He's been knocked down one time and never been knocked out. So you gotta take that in consideration. He's in one matchup that's gonna have that plays a role in making him. Well, actually, it's two matchups that play a role in making him number one on my list. The first being the matchup against John the Beast Mugabe. That matchup, he just took so much punishment. Mugabe was the hardest puncher back in the 80s. He was the hardest puncher. He was known for dishing out punishment. He was known for, just vicious knockouts and stuff. But, he was, now people were fearing for Hagler. A lot of people were thinking Hagler was going to lose the matchup. And, Hagler went in and had a war with Mugabe. I don't remember. I don't think the matchup went the full 15 rounds, but I believe that Hagler knocked out Mugabe. But the whole matchup, was hitting Hagler with some shots that you wouldn't think that he could take. He took some horrible shots in that matchup, and that matchup had some after fight effects. Hagler even said he urinated blood after the match. But John Mugabe, was the hardest puncher of the 80s. He was knocking guys out, and he couldn't knock out Marvin Hagler. Marvin Hagler, the whole fight was standing right there fighting on the inside with him, and just taking all kinds of blows to the head and stuff, and and if you guys get to see the bout, or get a chance to just watch this bout, because you'll see what I'm talking about here about Marvin Hagler. He took some hard shots, and the shots look like they hurt. They look like they hurt. There's even a few shots that would remind me of Alexis Arguello versus Aaron Pryor back in like '81, when Arguello hit Pryor with like an uppercut, and his head just kind of snapped back, and then he just continued to fight. That's kind of what some of these shots remind me of. They kind of remind me of that fight, in sort of a sense, because it was like almost all those shots looked like the shots that one shot Arguello hit Pryor with in that bout. That's just what a lot of these shots look like. But Marvin Hagler just kept fighting, and and then Roberto Duran, he hit, he had a really good chin, but he hit Hagler with some very dangerous shots as well, But the matchup that stands out to me the most is the War, 1985, the War, Thomas the Hitman Hearns versus Marvin Hagler. This matchup was very short. Every boxing fan has to see that matchup. Even the casual fan, every boxing fan has to see the War of 1985, Thomas Hearns versus Marvin Hagler for the middleweight championship of the world. This matchup isn't one of those long, boring matchups, that a lot of casual fans don't like to watch. This matchup, is short, but it's legendary, because in the first round, both fighters came out swinging. Hearns, tall, who was a tall welterweight, had so much power in, I believe, his left hand. And Hearns, was hitting Hagler with his best shots. He was hitting him with that powerful left hand, and Hagler just ate the shots, and he was actually hurt. He had like a cut. He had a cut, and I believe the referee wanted to stop the bout, and Hagler just started to fight back. Actually they both were fighting back with each other, and Hagler knocked out Hearns in the third round, but Hagler ate some of Hearns' best shots. And it was and sometimes you would think with Hagler was just an adrenaline rush. That's what some would think about that. It was just an adrenaline rush that made him stand up to those shots, and it could have been. But Hagler Hearns, is a legendary bout, and on top of that, Hagler, was taking some of Hearns' best shots. And Hearns had knocked out, Roberto Duran before that, and he knocked out Roberto Duran. I believe he had a loss to Sugar Ray Leonard, but he did knock out Roberto Duran. But Duran could have, I think, was weight drained anyway. But people were looking at Duran and stuff, and this matchup, was a key factor of me putting Hagler at number one, because Hearns was hitting him with some very hard shots. The shots that Hearns hit Hagler with, were shots that will knock out the average, that could actually knock out the average light heavyweight. But Hagler went and he fought back. He got the knockout in the third round, against Hearns, and it was a legendary matchup. But if you want to talk about tough fighters, you got to bring up marvelous Marvin Hagler. Marvin Hagler had probably the best chin of all time that people don't talk about. And some may disagree, but I believe that Hagler has the best chin of all time. That's just my opinion. But anyway, that was my number one for this week. I'm not going to do a top five next week due to the holidays, but I'll be back the week after. But anyway, that was Distance. Peace.